Why is Clemson losing recruits? Part 2. I didn't expect to do this, but I went live earlier today, talked about why Clemson lost the recruits that everybody was losing their mind over the past 2 weeks. We've lost 3 recruits. Two of them one of them definitely we thought was, hey, he's going to become a Tiger, and 3 of them didn't. And so I addressed that, and today I ran across an article that I can't believe that I missed it. I actually looked for articles before I went live today, and this one I was like, I have to go live again and call it "Why is Clemson Losing Recruits Part 2." Before I get into that, welcome to the channel. I'm glad you're here. I'm Brian. I hope everything is going well with you. Happy early 4th of July. Please don't blow off any fingers tomorrow. A lot of people get shocked about that, but when you're playing with explosives that you have to set on fire, I know they're pretty, but there's no reason to blow off your fingers. I hope you'll subscribe. It is free. It's the easiest way to support the channel. If you want to support on a monthly basis, there's a join button below. $3 or $5. I do appreciate it. Now, I am going to read an article. I'm not going to read all of it. You can go check it out for yourself. In fact, I'm going to put it here in the chat. This is from the Clemson publication, Rubbing the Rock. Rubbing the Rock. This is written by John Chansey. Now, I want to go ahead and say this. I'm not trying to create any false controversy here. I don't know anyone over there, and they may not like the work that I do. I don't know that, but I never want to give off the idea that, maybe they approve of my work if they don't. And but this was just a really good piece, and it really makes the point very well that I was talking about beforehand without even seeing this. So this article is titled, and I put it in the chat here. You can click on it. Tell them it, by the way, let them know that, I talked about it on my channel. Clemson football policies on NIL could cost them David Sanders. Now, David Sanders is a massive, massive, massive recruit for Clemson. According to this, he's the number 2 overall player in the 24/7 Sports composite, regardless of position. He's being recruited by Matt Luke. And a guy like this would help turn around Clemson's playability on the line. Real quick, shout outs to everyone. Tiger Man, it's good to see you, my friend. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. The OHIO podcast, my friend Eric Boggs. Eric, glad to see you in here. Happy 4th to you. Everybody go check out, it's a couple of videos ago, I had Eric on, and he talked about the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know you hate them. I know Southerners don't like them and blah, 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 but Eric's good people. Go check it out and let him know that you heard about him from me. So let's talk about this. So David Sanders is a big recruit. Everybody and their brother's after him. But this article lays it out. Now, I want you to read the article, by Rubbing the Rock. I don't want to read the whole thing to you. But basically, it lays out that Clemson uses NIL. Did you hear that, folks? Clemson does use NIL. I am not dumb to this. Most people who follow Clemson football is not dumb to this. You will always hear the intermingling of Dabo Swinney doesn't like NIL and the transfer portal, and it's like, conjoined twins. He does use NIL. Now, Clemson's NIL, from everything that I am hearing, is not dominant. It's not as dominant as it's not dominant as, say, some of the larger schools who has donors who can open up, their personal bank and drop millions of dollars into it. You even heard about Clemson's baseball coach saying, "Hey, we need more NIL dollars." He mentioned that, and so for everybody, you need to hear this. Clemson has NIL. But Clemson especially on the football team, uses it to retain the talent that they have. They are not using that money to go out and get new players. You're like, well, yeah, duh, he doesn't use the transfer portal. No, Dabo Swinney does not use NIL to get a player to sign with Clemson. Now, this is back from April 4th, 2024. Swinney said, we don't waste any time. It's pretty clear cut and upfront who really aligns with who we are and who's looking for something different. Our NIL is for retention, not recruiting. Okay? This article goes on to talk about how Clemson struggles to attract players they want from the transfer. Let me see. The transfer portal. But NIL hasn't completely held them back in the high school recruiting. This is true. I mean, Clemson has the number 9 ranked recruiting class according to 24/7 Sports at this point for 2025. But it goes on to point out that guys like Sanders is exactly who Clemson needs, but other schools is willing to pay him. Now, okay, let's pause here. Let's talk about Marcus Lattimore. I know he was a chicken and everything. He was a Gamecock. Marcus Lattimore was one of the best running backs we've seen in 20 years in college football. He just so happened to be a South Carolina Gamecock. Lattimore blew out both knees, if my memory serves me correct. And this guy could have went on and made ungodly amounts of money in the NFL. Fortunately, he did have an insurance policy. So I think he made over $1 million off the insurance policy just in case he got injured. That's a very smart move on his part. But can you imagine if Marcus Lattimore could have received NIL money? Now, this has been talked about with multiple athletes, Trevor Lawrence, Sean Watson, all these great athletes who could not have NIL deals. Now they can. They've made more money than you know what to do with. But I bring up Marcus Lattimore because he got hurt and he did not get the NFL career. So while everybody can look at this David Sanders guy and anyone else who's wanting money coming out of high school and say, as this article says, they're gold diggers. Folks, one of my only problems that I have with college football players being paid is when they look at their scholarship and it means nothing to them. This is coming from a person who had to pay for their schooling. Okay? I had to pay for my degree. I had to pay for my graduate degree. Okay? And that actually limited me where I went to school because, example, and I keep this kind of personal, but all I'm going to say was there was a graduate program I was really interested in, and I feel like I could have got in for my MBA, and it was going to cost $120,000 for 1 year. I was going to have to foot that. I did not feel comfortable doing that. So what did I do? I went to a school that I could afford. All right. These football players, a lot of them, I mean, a college scholarship means nothing to them. That's where I, as an individual, have a problem with that. Well, how much money are they making off those young men and everything? I get the argument. I get the argument. Lower your blood pressure. Chill. I get that. But it's not like they're getting nothing. With that said, if the rules allow these young men, these boys, turning into guys, into men, right? If it allows them to be paid money and they can make it, folks, let them make it. Why do you go to work? Why do I go to work? To earn money. Well, to change the world, says a bunch of school teachers who ends up hating their career and either finds a new career or they're miserable the whole time they teach and they take it out on their students. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not knocking teachers there. I have family members who are teachers. I have one of my good friends. She is a teacher. One of my good friends, his wife is a teacher. She has every certification you can imagine. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, she doesn't like it. She's a good person. She's good at her job, but she hates it. Okay? So I'm not knocking teachers there. I want to make that very clear. With that said, you go to work for a job. This young man and many of these, yes, you're going to have bad characters, bad actors in this. But, I mean, guys, come on. Come on, let's stop playing these games. This young man, if he were to, why I brought up Marcus Lattimore, if this young man goes to college and he could make $2 or $3 million and he blows his knee out and he gets the majority of that money, it'll be more than most guys who has the talent to potentially make it to the NFL. This guy right here will most likely make it to the NFL unless something bad happens to him. A lot of guys of this stature, of David Sanders' stature, his ability, his playability, he has a good chance of making it to the big leagues. And to believe that Clemson's use of NIL would not be extended to this guy when, as Sweeney said, and I want to make sure that I quote him well, most guys in the transfer portal are not good enough to play at Clemson. Let's pause there. That is a true statement. And you go, whoa, Brian, what do you mean that's a true statement? Because in my other video, I talked about Keon Coleman, who was a transfer from Michigan State to Florida State. He caught the game-winning touchdown against Clemson. Most means the majority of the guys in the transfer portal are not good enough to play at Clemson. That is true because how many, hundreds, if not thousands entered the transfer portal. And the vast majority of them are not good enough to play at Clemson. But there are the Keon Colemans. There are the Riley Leonards. There's great running backs. There's great defensive linemen and players who are more than good enough to play at Clemson. Okay, I get where he's going with that statement. But the idea is that Clemson's not going to offer someone who's in the transfer portal because they're not going to play the transfer portal game. We're going to go to the high schools and we're going to get these players. Well, now I am reading this, and I had a question about it before, but I'm reading this article from John Chansey at Rubbing the Rock, and he's saying, he is clarifying and making it clear, Clemson is not offering NIL as an incentive to get players out of high school to come to Clemson, South Carolina. So now we're pigeonholing ourselves even more. That answers the question of why we can't land an incredible quarterback out of high school anymore. That answers it. If you have a question of why some of these top players, except for a few, well, what about Sammy Brown? Sammy Brown is an exception, and I'll guarantee you something was worked out for Sammy Brown, whether Dabo Swinney knows it or not. Do you think Sammy Brown is not going to get NIL money? Going in here real quick just to hop in and see a couple of comments. There's a bunch of comments in here. Tiger Man says, tomorrow is a tough day for me and my brothers. My father passed away on July the 4th, 9 years ago. I'm sorry. I am sorry. And he was a Clemson graduate. I'm sorry about that, Tiger Man. I hope you can enjoy tomorrow and yeah, I really, my heart goes out to you. Oh yeah. Hopefully we hear from Bobby Durkins tomorrow. I hear he emerges from his holler to buy Michelob Light from the local 7-Eleven every 4th. This is true, Eric. One of my old friends, good friends. That went there. By the way, that guy is the one who made this sign. You tell him to make another one of those. You can charge a handful for it. Stoopsified's in here. Flux Flow is in here. Rob Ellen's in here. Rustastic. Good to see you in here. The Ohio Podcast, OHIO, Eric says, we've been saying for a while, if Sanders wants NIL, he's going to be a Buckeye. If he wants to stay close to home, he's going to be a Tiger. That's it. Rustastic says, old school thinking is why Nick Saban had to go. He realized not playing the portal and NIL game wasn't going to work long term. Sure. But here's an interesting thing, Rustastic. He did actually play the portal game. Remember, he got Jamison Williams from Ohio State. No offense, Eric. He did use the portal, even though he hated it. Notice the thing between Saban and Sweeney. He hated it, but he still realized he had to use it. That's the difference here. But you're right. So this article pretty much lays out and addresses everything that I was talking about, and I feared, and I said, hey, I would like for someone to clear it up for me. Are we offering high school players NIL to bring them to Clemson? And this article plainly answers it. No. We use it for retention. Okay, so we're not going to use the portal. Okay, that's I get I get that that's your standard and that's your conviction, but all right. We do have NIL. Okay, well that's good. That's good. We do have NIL. All right. But we don't have the pocketbook like Texas or Ohio State or some of these other schools. So all right, okay. I get that. All right. But what we do have, we're going to try to offer like some of the players we're trying to pull in that could literally change the trajectory of the program, right? Oh no, we're only if they come and they sign with Clemson and they do good. I mean, that's pretty much it. Okay. So at this point, I step back and I logically offer you this. At that point, does it not make sense to ensure that Clemson goes after the very best offensive coaches in the country as a whole? Because if we can't compete because A, we're not going to offer the top tier players like they're being offered to every other school in the country, we're not going to offer them NIL money to come to Clemson, either for two reasons. Either because we don't really have it or we don't want to use it other than for retention. We're either going to do that, offer them. Well, we can't offer them because we supposedly don't have as much money. Okay, let's start over. I'm getting confused here. It's annoying. So we're not offering money to players coming out of high school, but we're only going to use high school. We're not going to use the transfer portal. But we also don't want to do it because, well, we don't want to do it. And also because there's questions about if we have the funds to do it in NIL. Because we don't have the pocketbook like Texas and other schools like that. So doesn't that mean that we should go after the top coaches across the board? So we can take 3-star players and develop them into 4- and 5-star players? Now coaching matters more than ever. That's what I'm raising this point to. Like the offense should be full of Matt Lukes at their respective positions. Since we're willing to pay $1 million, $2 million to coaches, $750,000 here, $950 there, 1.6 over here. You and Mama go in there and get that truck, get that money out of that Brinks truck, and we'll write you up a contract year by year. That's what you get. We're not going to play football. We're not going to pay a football player. What we need to ensure is that we have the best coaching staff in the country. Because it's going to take us, we'll get lucky and get a 5-star who's just always wanted to play for Clemson or like Sammy Brown. So somebody told me that Sammy Brown has ties to Clemson. Okay, great. Him and his hair comes down, they're going to play for Clemson. Do we have a roster full of Sammy Browns? The correct answer is no. So if you're going to basically have 3 stars and some 4 stars, we need the best coaching staff in America. Because either we can't or we won't compete with NIL. That's what I present to you at the 19-minute and 45-second mark. That's really all we have to say here, right? You know, looking through this, I'll tell you that everything this Vols fan knows about Clemson, I learned from you. Rustastic, that is a good and a bad thing, my friend. Everybody, my son is outside of my bonus room door screaming like his hand. He's on the phone with someone. Anyway, Philip C says that's how Georgia is doing it. So, folks, I'm just going to kind of close this out and just say this article by Rubbing the Rock by John Chansey, again, I'm not associated with them. It's nothing against them. Maybe they don't like what I do. Maybe they love what I do. Maybe they could care less. They've never heard of me. I just always want to make that clear because there's certain people in the Clemson community. I'm not making this up. I have been told that they want nothing to do with me. So I just always like to give that courtesy to whoever I am citing. But this article is very bothersome. And it's very well written. I mean, it's just laying it out there for everybody to see the facts, and you can take from it what you want to take from it. But I'm going to tell you this in the Clemson community. Everyone who knows anything about me knows that I love my Tigers. You know that I grew up right outside of Clemson. I mean, like, I had to drive by Clemson almost every day. I drove by, I could see the stadium off in the distance. It was surreal, okay? I love my Tigers. I've been pulling for them for many, 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 many years. I can remember the Danny Ford days. I'm old enough to remember that. I can more than remember the two Tommies that coached for us back to back. Folks, Dabo Swinney has given us incredible times here at Clemson. And to quote him, we didn't sniff a national championship for 35 years until he did it. You remember he said that on last year. He made that comment. He let everybody know that he is the reason that Clemson is anything. And I would just ask respectfully to the good coach, the coach who has won 12 consecutive, or had 12 consecutive 10-win seasons, 6 consecutive playoffs, 2 national championships, and one of only 2 coaches in college football that is active right now who has 2 national championships to his name. I would just ask him to please look at college football and either implement NIL to these massive players or continue to overhaul his offensive coaching staff, because he's going to need the best coaches possible to take 2 and 3 star players, 3-star players, and turn them into NFL talent. Because I'm going to tell you this, if a young man has the ability to make a couple of $1 million while he's in college, whether he goes to the NFL or not, that young man comes from, whether he comes from a good home, whether he was raised by, his home life was just absolutely non-existent. That young man is going to take the money. Why? Because money is the reason every person goes to work, unless you're like a missionary or something. Okay? So I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I'm not going to be hyper holy. I'm not going to sit on this moral high horse that us Clemson fans sit on when we talk about teams who implement NIL, teams that use the transfer portal. We're acting like Bobby Boucher's mom when we're talking about the NIL and the transfer portal and paying these players. Folks, first of all, this has been going on for many years, even when it was illegal. It was against the rules. I say illegal, it was against the rules. And it's now more than implemented, now more than ever. And the rule says it's okay. Folks, if Clemson is going to pigeonhole themselves, I need to go to bed, pigeonhole themselves. And then we're going to pigeonhole ourselves on the transfer portal, and we're going to pigeonhole ourselves on NIL and who gets it. And if we're going to pigeonhole ourselves on who's coaching on our staff, the Clemson staff, and I say our, it's like, you're part of the team. I've been pulling for the team forever. Ever. Forever. I love my Tigers. If the only way that you can pull for, that you can say we, is if I've been on the football team, there's a bunch of you that says we. There's a bunch of you who writes big checks to IPTAY. There's a bunch of you who follow the team. There's a bunch of you who goes to all the events. There's a bunch of you who could never say that. So yes, we. We're going to have to come to a conclusion, and it's a very painful one. Clemson football is riding off into the sunset. If we are the ones who, if Clemson football is pigeonholing themselves at every corner while every other football team is using the resources available to them, enjoy what is left of Clemson football, because it will not be the dominant club that it's been in the past. And folks, if for some reason Clemson was to stumble into the 12th team, it's now triple the size. And in a few years, it's going to be 14 teams. It's becoming not so special to get into the college football playoff. You used to have to try hard to get into those 4 spots. Now it's 12, and soon it'll be 14 spots. I don't want Clemson to be one of those teams who ends up just barely getting in. Everybody's dancing around, kind of goofy like they did when they beat a subpar Kentucky team in the Gator Bowl. How far have the mighty fallen to be celebrating like that because of a win against Kentucky? The bowl game before that was a shellacking in the Orange Bowl to Tennessee, and a quarterback who only had one good game in 6 years of his college football career, and it was against Clemson. And before that, a Cheez-It Bowl. What is going on? But if this team stumbles into the playoff and we beat our chest and go, look, that pessimistic guy who's not really a Clemson fan, he was wrong. And then Clemson plays a Georgia, an Ohio State, an Alabama, a Texas, an Oregon. I could keep going. And they get lit up. Do we really want to join the ranks of TCU, a team who you can't remember that they went, that they did so great that season a few years ago? No, all you can remember is that 58-point loss to Georgia in the national championship. I bet they'd love to forget that season. What about Florida State? Oh, we had players sitting out. I get it. All right. Didn't they lose by what, 60 points? To Georgia? They don't even want to talk about that. Yes, I know you had players sitting out. I get it. But does Clemson really want that to be their destiny? Does Clemson football want to join those ranks? As a logical fan, no. No. You don't see any TCU fans running around beating their chest talking about they were just in the national championship a little over a year and a half ago, do you? No, because they don't want to talk about it. And I don't want to see that happen for our Clemson team, but I am telling you this. They may not get shellacked and get the crap beat out of them by 50 points. But I will tell you this, if something does not give and Clemson does not stop pigeonholing themselves, backing themselves into the corner, turning down all of the resources at their hands, that's where we're heading. And we're going to have to watch reruns of 16 and 18 to feel any ooey gooeys, because unfortunately, I think that's where we're at. All right, folks. I appreciate everything that you have. I appreciate all the comments. Jay makes a really good. Jay, I want to highlight this one. We actually need more donors and former players to donate to the 110 Society. Eric Bakich had said it himself. Jay, I agree with you, but I do want to throw this. I do want to throw this out there to you. Let me see. Yeah, I want to throw this out there too. If Clemson received $50 million in NIL money tomorrow and it was allocated to the football team, by what this article is saying that I've referenced from Rubbing the Rock, Clemson football still wouldn't offer high school stars the money to make them come to Clemson. So we could have all the money in the world, it still wouldn't matter. And we still wouldn't use the transfer portal. So I do agree with you that Clemson needs more donors, but at this point, it doesn't seem like that's even the issue. The issue is, even if we had the money, we still wouldn't offer it to these donors. So we will see. Folks, you take care of yourself. I hope you have a safe 4th of July, July 4th, however you want to say it. As always, go Tigers.